That's what I'm saying. Like, I'm all for it. That's what I'm saying. Like, I'm always fascinated what Republicans do differently. I could care less who gets the job done. Like, what's on the sides of the but like, we're talking about cities like Chicago, cops know they're going to get shot at, right? Like, that's just. Chicago? There are no. I would also say that it's hard to know what would really take place because in large cities you don't see Republicans as mayors. It would be interesting to see large cities ran by Republicans. We do have examples, a few examples of where this is true. You could go back to Virginia. I think this is probably the best example of what you're talking about when better outcomes happen. But the challenge is in a big city, which is different than in the suburbs and different from rural communities. And I think it's interesting that in big city you tend to see Democrats being favored, and in the rural areas you definitely see the Republicans being favored. But in the suburbs, that tends to be the most crumble that you're going to get. And then depending on how close your suburb is to the big city, it might lean blue. And if your suburb is leaning more towards the rural area, it might lean a little more red. That's the thing I think we should think about is instead of just thinking of red or blue or this state, that state, I think we should really hone in on the different policies that are necessary for governing the wants, the needs of the people in these different areas are different. Yes, everybody wants to be safe, but the threats and the challenges that you're faced with, they're just different. And that's why I think we should more thoughtfully move towards what would be the best set of laws to govern a rural area. And by the way, not all rural areas are the same. Not all big cities are the same. There's different. We need to examine the unique challenges. There's a trend line though that says if you have less tolerance for violent crime, you're going to see less violent crime. And the evidence think locally, I think New York was as bad as it is now. Everybody dies from it. And maybe a profound change. This change was, and to be fair, I just think it's New York's experiment. I think it happened to be New York, like what I don't know, America's the biggest impact was, I would actually love to see what the day-to-day violent crime for his watch, under his watch, because I know his biggest impact was going after John Gotti, organized crime. Like even just being mob was running, I believe it was a district. You clean that up, you clean up everything really big. I was taking speed as crime. I forgot what point in his career he really lost his fucking mind, but just goes to show. He didn't have a multifaceted approach, and I think that you can ask anyone to share it was a profound change. It wasn't just statistics and maybe it happened. So guys, let me ask you something. You dream a lot of schedule. I do. Every night. Nightmares. I got Jack's out a lot of examples. Whatever it is, that's why I thought it'd be amazing, like when you get those flyers to vote for like local judges coming up the road. Judges, there are some like folks that do deep dives to make history of judges that show you offenders. It's not all cops in the street to get into that. Perhaps I don't know that this is social dark, but the knowledge they talk with judges when they don't even elect appointing judges are elected. We should also not apply this like DAs and stuff. I think you get well enough in the chain of offices. Like, I don't want to be elected like the water commissioner. Like, nobody knows what the water commissioner is doing. Like, you have to have usually like executives and legislative body and supplement just because life is too busy to turn over that kind of oversight of the water commissioner to them. It makes a whole lot more sense. This applies to a lot of like lower offices. Pennsylvania's got a weird system where you have a lot of like really low level positions in any other state would simply have appointed into a committee. And they would look for people that have knowledge, skill, and ability in a particular area. And but in Pennsylvania, you put yourself on the ballot, sometimes unopposed, get appointed, and you know nothing about the job that you're about to do. I know about this because the Libertarian Party, when I was in Parliament, we organized around that, and in one election got over 150 Libertarians elected. That was in 2021, and it exploited a few things. Number one, the major parties needed to declare their candidacy before the minor parties, so that you can find elections where there's only one opponent, or find elections where you're completely unopposed. And then once you get on the ballot, if the major parties, after that period is over, if they want to run, they would have to go right in, and then they're at a huge disadvantage. The
we have a pretty good system. Is $37 trillion in debt a pretty good system? If that was a business and you created $37 trillion in debt and created no savings for your citizens whatsoever, you think that's a pretty good system, huh, Brent?
Yeah, I think a system where your per capita wealth is the highest that all of the highest in human history, that keep on expanding in a global scale and expanding human lifespan. I think is a pretty good system that we've developed in human history, and it, it's much more damaging to knock it all down than to not understand how lucky to be born and alive in 2025 versus an earlier period in history. Well, what if you were able to participate in the economy from, let's say, 1870 to 1900? I would argue that was a pretty good time to during periods where there was significant economic growth, which you'll always point to because we're still a developing economy, that we had higher year GDP growth to now, which you see throughout the world in developing economies, which were that period. Yeah, it's the biggest expansion of an economy in the history of the world. Yeah, and a dollar is 100% growth, and you have $2. Same effect with the economy, like going from a relatively poor economy, industrializing and doubling in size, or having double-digit growth, is something you saw in America during that period, and frankly you see in many other developing economies. So it's nothing surprising, but you're still much better off living in a period post economic development in the time we are living in. Interesting. So post the economic growth of 1870 to 1900. So just so we're clear, the economic growth was possible because of massive deregulation, and so that allowed businesses to do what they needed to do in order to grow. And then following that period of time, we had massive restrictions that were put in place. And then shortly after that, come 1929, we have the biggest financial collapse. During this financial collapse, preceding that was a period of heavy regulations, and extending the depression was the fact that we doubled down on even more regulations. And so the evidence is very clear that if you want to grow the economy, you have to deregulate. If you want to crash an economy, you overregulate. Well, it's also evident. It's also evidence of the erroneous claim that this country was built on free labor of slavery. It was actually more expensive to house and to feed human beings than it was to pay them. And so economically, slavery was a bad thing. We know that not only was it immoral, it's economically a bad thing. And so once they were freed, and the market was deregulated, we were able to see a massive expansion in this country, and the quality of life went up for everyone. And then just to be clear, we had several periods of pretty sharp economic downturn in the 1880s, 1890s, and even early in 1900s. We had a downturn in '87. So this period is also known as really the bust period. push the